decade of assassinations. And he's a vociferous writer. That's the way you would say that. Flight of CE-39 was his first book, which was about the magic bullet. Yes, look at the baby.
There you go. Very nice. Yeah, that's my license plate.
He started out particularly on the Dealey Plaza area because Ken Jones said concentrate on one particular aspect. And I think he's pretty well taken that to heart. He's written 4 or 5 other things. Some of them you're familiar with: TUM, The Umbrella Man, Alias Oswald. And so it's our pleasure to have Mr. Robert Cutler with us to visit a while.
It's a pleasure to be here because I think this is, this is one of the great breakthroughs as far as I'm concerned. I think what these two guys are doing, and I don't wish to, shortchange you, my dear. But what's happening here is unbelievable. It's such a wonderful thing to be able to create a climate where people can come in and say, hey, look, this is what it was, and not be afraid of something. That's what I think is happening right here. As far as I personally am concerned, of course, I've been working a long time, and we've got nowhere. I mean, I realize, everybody realizes the media is beating us all over the public. But I think that when we finally get around to it, the media is going to have to crumb somewhere. And I think this will be one of the places where it happens. Now, as far as what you want me to say, the best thing for me to do is say that the Umbrella Man, yes. I suppose Dick Sprague and I were talking about it, and in '75, when that book was published, we decided that I decided because I work an awful lot alone. Dick was alone too. But I decided that had to be a weapon. And then Dick said, to back it up, he said, look, I've interviewed everybody in Willis 5 who's standing where Gordon is with the umbrella. And all the people, the Chisholms, and I can't remember the other name, but he interviewed all those people. And nobody remembers an umbrella. Nobody remembers anything about it, because of course it was behind them. And they were all looking at the motorcade, and here's Gordon up behind us with the umbrella. Nobody remembered anything. And of course the flechette doesn't make any sound. So as a result, when we first found out it was a weapon, I sent the book down to Fletcher Crowley. Fletcher Crowley immediately wrote back, made a little sketch of a flechette on the edge of his, the margin of his typewriter thing. He said, try one of these. And I said, what the hell is it? Well, I talked to him, and he said, well, I know about it, so it's all right. So we tried one of those, and I immediately made a modification of the original weapon.
You better tell them who Fletcher Crowley is.
Oh, Fletcher Crowley. Well, it takes a long time. Can you tell me who Fletcher Crowley is?
He was the liaison officer between the Pentagon and the CIA. Very high-ranking, in-the-know individual. So when he throws out Fletcher Crowley.
Yeah, he would brief the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the stuff that the CIA had. That's what he was doing. And God, he told me how he found out about the flechettes. He said a guy came into the office one day in the Pentagon, and he said, "Watch this flechette," and he shot about 6 of them into the wall, just by, I don't know how to get it, but Fletcher says, as though it were a straw, a few straws on it, and they just went, and they invented themselves. How do you like that? He said, well, I don't have anything to do with that, but if you come down the hall, we got a fellow around over in here who would be very interested in it. So that was, I think he said that was 61 or 2, somewhere right around in there. So then, immediately, of course, we redid the weapon. Instead of having a canister for CO2 to fire a pellet, I didn't know what the hell. How the hell did you figure it out? You knew you had the throat wound. You knew you had an umbrella. You knew you had to get something to the throat. And you knew about when it happened. C-178. So you figured it could be CO2, it could be something. So when he told us about the flechette, we just changed it and put the trigger down here. And I made this into a battery. When I was doing the end of the next book, I think it was, the one that goes just beyond this, 76 seconds to Dealey Plaza. I suddenly looked at barn 9 again, I think it's barn 9, and there is Gordon holding the damn umbrella, and I put it under the microscope, and I could see the curve of the umbrella. Yeah, even though it's right head on, so that you see it vertically, so but you can see just enough light when you put it in. When you put it into under the microscope, you can tell. So I had to change that right away. So we put it back, and it's a plain diagonal umbrella with a curve like that. It's got some kind of a mechanism. It's got a trigger down low. You wire it up, and what happens is zingo. It starts the motor in the self-propelled rocket. That's what it is. It's a small self-propelled rocket that was used a great deal in Vietnam, by the way, after it was developed. I feel that what they were doing with Kennedy was that it was, I think the Gordon was an experiment almost. I really thought it was, because I drew a picture with a 14-inch square right here, and it's just at the top of that square. He was aiming for right in like this. This would be your heart, your lungs. You'd get something in here. And Dick Sprague's always said that it was poison on it, because the president, you know, he brings his hands up here, but then he never really crumps. He just moves forward and down, and he's like this the whole time, and then finally they take the top of his head off. That's the story of the umbrella. The other story of the umbrella man is that one day I was looking. We went out to ITEC Corporation, which was near me. And I became quite friendly with them. They did all kinds of blow-ups of Beaufort 4, which is the great photograph of Jack White. They did very nice pictures of it. He got a hold of Dick Beaufort, who was a man that lived here in Dallas, and had taken a picture of the umbrella man sitting on the sidewalk. And unfortunately, Gordon's turning his head like this. But I've been so imbued into looking at these damn things. We were trying to stop the motion in the photograph, and we couldn't do it. And we got the best one we could. And I was looking at a picture of Gordon, which I think you guys had put in your book, I would say, just about that time. And it suddenly occurred to me, I had a print of it anyway. And I looked at it and I thought, this looks very familiar. These two things ought to be the same. I think this is the same guy. I think Gordon's the umbrella man. I wrote to Jack White. Jack White said, "You're crazy." I said, "All right, I'll give you $50. The $50 worked. He came out afterwards and he said he was 95% convinced that the picture taken of Gordon in '59, when he was apprehended by the New Orleans police, the mugshot, and the umbrella man by Dick Beaufort were the same people. He made overlays of them, a wonderful set of overlays that he made, and it's extraordinary how those two, even though they're taken 4 years apart, that they were just exactly right, and it came out perfectly beautiful. I interviewed Gordon. I found a private eye. He got out of jail. He got sprung. Somebody put a bail for him. He got out. My friend, I got a name of private eye from Jim Garrison in New Orleans, and I went down there and met him. And the very first thing that happened was he had a cane. I met downstairs. We were up in the elevator. Went into a dining room, 2:30 in the afternoon, I think it was about. Went in the dining room, went way over the edge and out the window, and he took the cane and he put it on the windowsill and he said, "This is not a flechette." In fact, the very first words out of Gordon's mouth when I read it, "This is not a flechette." Well, I mean, from then on it was good fun to talk to the guy. The guy is an extraordinary person. And you've talked to him. Brilliant. Yeah, he's brilliant. He certainly is. He's got an IQ of somewhere. You name it. You name it. So that's really about all we have. That's all I have to offer. He offered, during the conversation, he offered to be, he said, "Don't you want to take a lie detector test? Well, don't you want me to take a lie detector test?" I said, "Sure, do you want to?" He said, "Why not?" I said, "What about the polygraph?" He said, "Don't bother the polygraph, I can beat that, I figured that." But how about PSE, the psychological stress evaluator? You know that your voice, it's your voice. So he said he'd do that. So I went back, asked him, came down again. I wrote down 155 questions, which is absolutely the wrong way to give a POC. I've since found out you've got to take the guy, you've got to take him the night before, you've got to talk to him, you've got to tell him the questions are going to be, you rehearse, you don't give him more than a dozen questions, and that's the way you really got to like him. I wrote out 155 questions, came down, Gordon and I sat down, we taped the whole thing, and then Bob Brown put the tape through the POC box, and the stylus, whenever you get excited about something, or whenever there's any tension in your voice, the stylus goes, you can hear it, of course, on the tape. Anytime you got a question, anything to do with David Browser, the stylus is going, I was right there with Bob Brown. It was good. I mean, it was an extraordinary thing, I thought. I'm convinced, of course, that Gordon is the Umbrella Man. Gordon Novell. But he came back, and Bob Brown wanted to make some more tests on him. So he said, Gordon, you come back with, I'll get, here are the questions I want to ask you. About 2 dozen of them. Gordon came back, and I heard from Bob afterwards. He said, Gordon came in. He said, I've had a bad cold, I don't feel very well, but why don't we go ahead? So he tried, and everything went completely wrong. Branham couldn't get a decent answer out of him at all. And what Branham figured out is he'd taken some kind of dope, and Gordon was trying to beat the POC through some kind of medication. Let's put it that way. He'd taken some kind of, I don't know what it was. Anyway, it was complete. The second test was no damn good at all. Gordon was on, gee, I passed that. I passed the test. I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. When we went to Dick Sprague and I went to the HSCA, the staff, before, Dick Sprague, Richard A. Sprague was counsel. And Sprague had Dick Sprague, my friend Dick, had 124 sides, I had 80 sides. We talked for 5 hours to the staff one night. We started at 5 o'clock, and we never stopped till 10 o'clock that night. And at that particular moment, I'm quite convinced now that that's when the staff began to realize, number one, there was a conspiracy, because these guys, New York detectives, basically, I mean, Philadelphia detectives, they didn't know anything about the fact that there'd been a conspiracy. That wasn't their day. And number two, of course, we showed him the Umbrella Man, but we didn't identify him. We went back in March and we identified two people who the Umbrella Man was. And they burst out laughing. He said, he was in here last week trying to talk to us. Typical Gordon Novell would come and take the initiative to go to the House Select Committee on Assassination, make damn sure that either he was under investigation or he wasn't under investigation, offer to help. I mean, that's the kind of guy you're up against. That's smart, I think. I take my hat off to him.
And he went there?
He what?
And Gordon went to the House Select Committee?
Yeah, he went right there.
I went and talked to him.
We laughed. I couldn't believe it. How would a guy do things like that? Well, anyway, subsequently to that, I identified it to Richardson Pryor. Richardson Pryor was the congressman in charge of the JFK subcommittee. I identified Gordon, and I said, he's in Butner, North Carolina, and came from North Carolina. He said, does he have a mental problem? I said, I don't really think so. I didn't know what he meant. Apparently, Butner, North Carolina, is a nut house, in effect. It's a place it's a mental institution. Gordon, I don't know how they got him in there anyway. But 5 months after that, they brought out Louis Witt from Dallas with a broken umbrella, who swore that he was under oath. I'm the man in boatroom 4. I'm sitting right there on the grassy knoll, sidewalk with the sidewalk, and there's the umbrella right of my right. That's what the power of the CIA can do. That's the only thing I could answer. I was appalled. I couldn't, in my wildest dreams, I never thought that anybody could go to that extent and get somebody who would swear, although he was 15 years older, he was a couple of inches taller, he was a little bit heavier, and he was right-handed, and Gordon's left-handed. Everything he does, all the pictures you see, Bond and everything, he's doing everything with his left hand. His left hand is going up to get a hold of the umbrella to bring it down after he's fired. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. He's fired from the left. Yeah. So there you are. That's the story of the umbrella man as far as I know. I'm sure you guys have many more questions. I should have told you.
Any questions?
If you wanted to reconstruct one of these umbrellas with this type of weapon built into it, how would you go about doing that?
You call up Charlie Cincinnati and ask him. I called Charlie Cincinnati, the CIA, and asked him, or Fort Dietrich, and asked him if I could have a drawing. And he said he thought it might be classified. And I said, I guess that's right. That's sort of the end of the conversation. I have no idea. You've got to get a flechette that is electronically activated. It's self-propelled. It's just a little tiny rocket, about an inch and a half.
Do we even have the little tiny rockets available? I'm not a gun expert myself, but somehow I've missed seeing that out available, even with all the discussion we've had about automatic weapons and so forth.
They have rocket pistols that actually you shoot them and they have propellant inside the bullet. Propellant inside.
Okay.
They're good up to 100 meters. They're accurate to 100 meters.
Well, you remember the weapon that John Tower and Frank Church got to see during the CIA?
Yeah, they're mounted on a 45. Yeah.
Scope and everything. It was a flechette launcher.
Yeah, flechette launcher.
And you get Barry Goldwater picked it up, and the best picture of it is with him, Barry Goldwater looking into the scope.
Yeah.
So they do make one.
I call the umbrella overhead flechette launcher. I mean, the question you guys should ask, and I know somebody's going to ask you pretty soon, is how do you fire it? How do you track, aim, and fire? The only way I can say is, number one, you've got to realize that Gordon is able to do more things than maybe normal people can do. And, of course, he was going to be paid, and that's great incentive for Gordon. He loves money. He loves to sue also. That's why sometimes you get nervous about it. But if you stand erect and hold the thing this way, and just your whole body, you have got to become the weapon yourself. And if he had something hanging down from one of those little coats, I know that, but if you may have had something hanging off that. You can't see it well, it's fired. I've tried to find it. I don't think he needed anything like that. I think that would be blowing in the wind, and, it's bad enough. I mean, there was quite a lot of wind right there. That's why I think it was lucky, because it's just the top of where they aimed. I think you aim with your whole being, and you stand rigid, and you turn, and we know he turns, and he's clearly, because the umbrella's turning. We plotted that.
I believe there's one shot where he seems to recall he's standing on the edge of the curve, leaning forward. He looks very, very intent, leaning forward, almost over the street. I don't know if you recall the photograph I'm talking about.
Is that Bronson?
I'm not sure.
It's the one that hasn't been published, right? Well, it was published in oh, gee. What was that? Best Evidence. I think Bronson. I think Bronson's in Best Evidence.
Would that particular shot have been taken before or after he fired?
That was after. Yeah, I think that's around 220 something. He fired at 178. So you can see the umbrella rise against the Simmons sign in the Zabur film. I think you lose it about somewhere 28, 29, something like that.
So he's leaning forward to see what damage has been done.
I see. That would be all right. That makes sense. Yes. And I think, of course, the other guy was with him, the accomplice. He had there's something there. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know. But there's something.
The guy that was with him,
Go on. The accomplice? The Cuban, so-called. Yeah, it's Jack Potter's the Cuban. Well, I've noticed something. If you look at this first film, you can see, I think there's something down under his hat that comes down in here, a wire. And I've sort of felt that maybe there's something up in here that he either took a picture or had some kind of sound here or whatever. That's what I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But that's the best I can do for you. I can't go any further. I wish I could. I wish I knew all the answers. But at least we know that Oswald did not kill the president. I think that's the other thing. That's for sure. Always. Anywhere I meet anybody, be sure and say that. There were so many facets of this whole picture that everybody's trying to solve and get everything 100% correct. It's not really necessary, but it's good fun to do. And again, the accomplice would be a hell of a guy to find, because then he'd know. I mean, then you'd say, well, you know Gordon? Of course I know Gordon. I was sitting there, you saw my picture. It'd be great to find him. I'd love it.
Any other questions?
Did I tell you who Gardner Bell was working with last year?
The what?
Gardner Bell, I tell you who he was working with last year.
I have
He was
forgotten.
trying to put up a partnership with Khashoggi and John DeLorean.
Oh, yes.
That's the type of thing
He's
that runs.
been with DeLorean. He was with DeLorean. Well, you found him in somewhere in Mississippi.
Yes. He worked at Alice Navy.
I'm gonna write the day of the Umbrella Man is the third one of this triumvirate. This is the first. And I just decided that I'm going to just name them. I'm going to name them anyway. I've made 2 printings. They only a couple hundred copies. Small. It's only 50 pages, not 40 pages maybe. Something like that. I'm going to expand this and put in a whole page that says, look, Gordon Novell, at the time that he did this, was a very intelligent, smart guy. The CIA needed intelligent, smart guys to do this kind of work. And anybody with the brass that Gordon Novell has him complimented in other ways. And then see if he can sue. I don't think he can. I think if you prove that, listen, it was a damn good, smart bunch of guys that did this operation out here. They weren't dummies. None of them were dummies. You know, you haven't got some fellow that drops out of high school at a misfit or anything like that, or who's just running around, you can't seem to hold a job. That's all wrong. The whole Warren report is very good on that basis. They make you think that way. Absolutely wrong. That's what they wanted you to do. So just be sure and realize everybody out here was damn smart. They all knew what they were doing. They were well coordinated, walkie-talkies, as you know. I'm not telling you really anything. I'm just reiterating. I want you to keep thinking about how smart those guys were. Because they were. They were well paid too. And they got away. The operation was excellent. Excellent. Think of it that way. Then you get a whole other different kettle of fish. You begin to feel what really happened. Also, be sure and think that Oswald was not Oswald, but he was a guy called Adele, who was a CIA agent who was trying to save the president. He passed the information upstairs. The president was going to be killed at the trademark luncheon. And immediately, as soon as he got upstairs, they changed the route, they changed the site, and they rearranged the whole thing, and they pulled off a damn smart operation. I think it's well to keep thinking in those terms. And then you have something to deal with specifically. And it's very, very clear that we know what happened. And so does President Bush. All those guys. Everybody up the top echelon knows that Oswald did not kill the president. They may not know who did it, but they have access to who knows who did it. And it's time these guys were brought to just jam impeachment down their throats. I think it may come again. I'm thinking that the impeachment is a little bit in the air.
I haven't heard this theory before about killing Kennedy at the luncheon. Can you tell me how that was going to be?
About what?
You mentioned that Kennedy might be killed at the luncheon, and that
At the trademark lunch. Yes.
at the trademark,
That's
and
right.
that how was that plot going to come off?
Well,
How are they going to do that?
I found that out because my co-author in Alias Oswald was a fellow called W.B. Mars, W.R. Mars. And Mars had talked to Harry Dean, and Harry Dean was working with the guy he knew as Oswald. And it was Harry Dean and Oswald that penetrated the conspiracy, found that the murder was to take place at the trademark. And then everything changed. They passed that word up, I think it's a couple of weeks, let's say from 22 to 14, around the 10th or something like that.
So then why wasn't Oswald at the trademark instead of being down there at the school book fund store?
There was no reason for him to be there. He was just going to keep on with doing his work. No, well, because he knew then that he had to get out of the conspiracy. He didn't want to be anywhere where those guys were. They would get him, perhaps. So it would be obvious for him to just keep on going.
Could you tell us a little bit about Harry Dean?
The only thing I know about Harry Dean is that WR. You know more about Harry Dean than I do, Gary. That's not much, huh? No. Well, he said he was a CIA, FBI operative. In other words, he was CIA, but he was also FBI. These guys, they had a field team out looking to find out who was going to kill the president. That's what happened. There was somebody doing that, and these were the guys in the field. Right. And when they put the information upstairs, passed it back through their superiors, it got up to J. Edgar Hoover. Look what happened. Hoover and Nixon were down here that night. I mean, all those guys. And Jim Mars wants you to believe now the LBJ had a big hand in it. Which is, it may very well be. I haven't bought that particularly. But Jim, if you read Crossfire, you read that part of it, it's very lucid, and it certainly makes a lot of sense. The only thing I would say is, if I'd been LBJ, I would not have written in the Mojang if I'd known that was going to happen. I'd be somewhere else. I would have thought maybe somebody might get me. You know, I mean, once they're out to get one, but they get the other. Do we have to think about it?
We have to think about the time.
Yeah, we do have to think about closing.
When did you first become interested in assassination? What is your background?
I was not Ted. It's not Gary. And somebody told me that there was a book out that was criticizing the Warren Report. So I said, well, if you got it. The only thing I knew about it was that there had been one shot that went through the president into the governor, and then somebody else had shot him, or then there was another shot that killed him. So the first thing to do was to get a copy of the surveyor's plot plan. Came down right down here and got that. And then try to draw a line from the window and see if you can go through the president and the governor. You know, the whole thing, blah, blah, blah. You can't. It's impossible. That book, by the way, I have at the hotel. And I've got that, and I'm going to put it in the archives here. The first one I did was the flight of CE-399, when those drawings were made. 5 different tests and 5 different Z-frames. And each one of them, one of them, you can't do it. But never say never. You can do it. And you can look in the House Select Committee report, and they did it. And I'll tell you how they did it. They turned the governor like this. They got the governor into this position, and all of a sudden that comes in right to right place. But if the governor is at where he should be, he's at, let's say, 224, 225, anything that comes through the president's neck is going to hit him on the left side of his spine, way over under his left shoulder, where he, as you know, he was hit right in here. It doesn't work.
They also had to reposition the president.
Oh yeah, they repositioned him. The only thing they didn't I'm not sure they didn't reposition him with the limousine.
I think they did. They shortened it by 6 inches, the distance.
They made it, yeah, and well, they moved it back to 190, instead of 210.
What about this umbrella right here? Did you acquire the umbrella?
Yeah, we did.
No.
That's it?
This is supposedly Stephen Quinn's umbrella.
That's an 8-rib umbrella, by the way, and the one that the House Select Committee has is 10 ribs.
Okay.
So, I mean, and much bigger.
And the one at Dealey Plaza is an 8-rib.
Oh, yeah, it's made of absolutely. You look, anytime you want to look and you check, you've got to be very careful, and you've got to think, and it's not easy. But if you look at Willis 5, make a little overlay of it, you'll come out with 8 ribs. And it's only, the dimensions, what's on that drawing that you have in the office there? I forgot the dimensions now. I think it's 32 this way, 36 this way, and the other one's 44 or something like that. So appreciably bigger. I mean, mean, that was a small, in those days, I don't even know if they had big umbrellas like that in those days, 63. They might have had for golf, but not for common use, I don't think.
That umbrella they show there at the assassination committee here is a great big umbrella.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I went down and got it, and one of the fellows said, well, I shouldn't do this, but I said, if you could possibly get out of that damn thing, please measure it. So I gave one of my cards. I drew a little sketch. You put the measurements in, send it back. You weren't supposed to. That's, you know, everybody was so damn worried. You got to sign this damn thing. Us secondary guys all signed that you should, thou shalt not tell anything to anybody ever. Oh, awful. However, they have broken that.
Afterward, the umbrella man and the Cuban sit down on the curb.
Yes.
Everyone else is running like crazy or falling down.
That's
on the
right.
ground.
You're right.
They're sitting on the curb, one looking in one direction and the other looking in the other direction.
Yeah.
And it was planned. What do you think they're looking for?
Well, I think the umbrella man was probably looking where the hell my car. I think he went uphill, went back up to Houston Street, and I don't know how he got away. But Cuban, he zaps off down. You can see him in town. For instance, town of 3, you see him running away. And that's when Jack White has that radio in his hip pocket. And the most awful thing that ever happened was I got a letter or did I talk to Wilma Bond? I talked to Wilma Bond. Somehow I got the information from Wilma Bond. When she got home, she opened up and she went to open up her camera and send it off. She had about 20 more frames. She thought she'd finished the film when she got to Bond 9. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? She was in the perfect position. She might have even followed Gordon, looking. I mean, she was just panning all over the place. She's got wonderful pictures, of course, as you know. Bond 4, Bond 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They were great. Ah, one of the worst things that ever happened. I didn't know anything about that. I'm sorry, I do have to go. We got to go get my wife.
Thank you, boss.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, indeed. Always. Get somebody interested in this thing. You must, get a little more interest. That's all. Yeah, you've been interested in that. So you have to be getting it. That's right. Well, I just read it. I'm trying to get some more time.
Hello? Only 2 years, Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. All that time, and yet we still have questions, doubts about what really happened that day. Thought we would have gotten some satisfaction back in '69 with the trial of King's alleged assassin, James Earl Ray. The trial was over in less than 2.5 hours. The quick decision to accept Ray's plea of guilty prevented the case from being further scrutinized in the public view. I was covering that trial for NBC, and I remember thinking at the time, what's going on here? Ray's attorney was Percy Foreman, a lawyer who thrived on great courtroom drama. Why would he represent Ray if he knew the trial would be over in just a few hours? It just didn't make sense. Well, tonight, join us as we explore the unresolved issues surrounding Dr. King's death, including the biggest question of all, was there a conspiracy? We will hear from former CIA and FBI officials, from Martin Luther King III, and from James Earl Ray. Join us now as A&E Premieres presents Who Killed Martin Luther King?
I was looking through the peephole of the glass. As I was watching Dr. King, I saw him look over toward the boarding house. And then whenever he looked back, like he was going to look into the parking area, that's when he come up off of the grading, and that's when he was shot. I would say I was the only one that saw him get shot, actually get shot from the front. And it's not no pleasant sight. I felt very bad inside that this had to happen in Memphis, Tennessee.
The shame of fireman George Lonaghy watching Dr. Martin Luther King through a police spy hole at the moment of his death was soon to be shared by many as the weight of world condemnation came down on the city of Memphis on the 4th of April, 1968. This was the killing of a major world figure. How could they have allowed it to happen? There were even suspicions that the Memphis authorities were accessories to the murder and involved in a cover-up. Over 20 years later, the man convicted of King's murder, James Earl Ray, still protests his innocence. In this film, we showed new evidence that there was indeed a conspiracy and that the trail leads into the heart of government itself.
Your position is that you are completely innocent?
Yes, sir. I have no responsibility for it. I did commit certain, they'd probably consider criminal offenses, but